gave him a high-level agenda, similar to, for those of you who were here last month with Matt Steed. I really want to leave this open too for like a forum of what do you want to get out of this. It's more of, we want to make sure that it's for you and that you are able to answer questions. With that, he's also prepared a couple of names. So with that, please give your attention to him, meeting, please stay off of your emails and your phones, unless you're taking notes, of course. But with that, we'll go for about an hour or so. But like I said, we really want to make sure it's applicable to you and your business. So anything that you might be struggling with right now, in addition to what he's already going to be talking about, we'd love to hear from you as well. Okay? Cool.
Thank you. Are we doing study groups after? Is this replacing?
This is it. This is their study group, the under 100.
Okay, awesome. Thank you, Dusty. Appreciate that. I don't think I know everybody here yet. Can I just get, let's see, what was your name?
Julia.
Julia.
I'm in Southern.
Nice to meet you, Julia.
Nate from Farmington.
Nate from Farmington. Okay, you look familiar. I don't know you. Sorry. Skylar. Okay, Farmington. Okay, of course, Jen. I don't know you yet. Brittany. Okay, I know St. George guys. Cool. Awesome. Well, like Dusty was saying, I'm Mike Capello. I've been doing this. I started as an intern, and then I've been doing this for about 4.5, 5 years total now. So just about done with my 4th full-time year. And yeah, I got a small, cute little family, 2 little boys, and my wife's pregnant with our number 3. And
You know where you're from?
I didn't tell you that. We find out in a couple days. So we're really excited.
Long?
We're just telling our close friends and family, so that's why you look at it.
You didn't make that.
We just started telling people. So Taylor, we're pregnant, by the way.
Can't come to basketball.
Oh man. Anyways, that's a little bit about me. My niche markets are going to be like sales guys, business owners. I love those areas. Summer sales, real estate, and then business owners. And we can talk about that as well. But I want to make sure this is extremely relevant. And if I'm just talking for an hour, this is not going to be useful, right? I want there to be a lot of engagement, a lot of questions. In fact, I want to start with the main question that you guys want to cover today, and hopefully get some more engagement as opposed to, I think there's just always too much talking, in my opinion. Let's like actually do something with it. Yeah, please.
So I think you're probably going to go first.
Yes.
So something that's super relevant for me is speaking engagements. Have you done them?
Yeah.
How often do you do them? How do you go about them?
Yeah.
Also, how do you keep them like condensed in a short time, but also super relevant because that is the nature.
Great. Okay. Any other? Great way to start. We had Trevor and Taylor over here. They asked me, hey, we're consistently at like 70-80% of Granum. How do we get to 100%? How do we keep 15 meetings? And that's really the core of where our focus needs to be the first few years of the business, right? So let's definitely touch on Granum or keeping full Granum and the areas that we focus on there. I really want to talk about your value as an advisor. I feel like that's extremely important as you start out. Just having conviction in who you are, why you do what you do. So if that's cool, can we cover that? Everybody's good with that? Any other questions or areas you guys really want to talk about?
I think it would be helpful if you kind of go over when you sit down, you said summer sales. So when you sit down with somebody who is making straight commission like that,
Yeah.
how do you add value to that conversation as far as them being like, help me figure out kind of how to make my income steady or how to kind of budget an unsteady income?
Yeah. Awesome. Great. Any other questions or areas that? Yeah, Kevin.
Are you recording this?
Yeah.
Can you send it to me?
Sure.
After we're done?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Anything else? There's a couple other items that Dusty sent me that I just want to go over and see if you guys wanted to go over any of them as well. Mission, vision, values, kind of those areas. The first 100 days in the business, kind of what the focus is. If you guys want to go over that. And then permanent life insurance. Where does that fit? How do you build conviction? Kind of your own program as well. Any of those areas that you guys want to cover? Yes, if we have time, maybe we'll see how the conversation goes. Permanent insurance, okay.
When you're going through the full Granum, can you maybe hit on start here, and once I kind of get that, then it's gonna,
Absolutely.
does that make sense?
Absolutely, yeah, great, awesome, thanks, yeah,
When
Justin.
you do touch on the positioning permanent life insurance, will you talk a little bit about positioning it to a young single
Younger,
person
yeah.
or a young married couple as well? Because I think we talk a lot about the near retirement phase, but what about how can I
Right.
position it now for them when they're 35 instead of 65?
Absolutely, okay, great. Any others? Okay, awesome. Great areas. I'd encourage you guys to take notes to figure out how does this apply to you. I've found that if you don't apply something, there's little impact to no impact. And we're all about helping make an impact, right, on our own lives, on our families' lives, and in other people's lives. So please, if there's one or two takeaways, write those down, implement it right away. Otherwise, this day wasn't as good of a use of time as it could have been, right? So if it's okay with everybody, I want to start with the value of an advisor, because I feel like that is one of the most meaningful things that we can all take away, especially the first few years in the business. So in this world we live in with technology, there's a ton of controversy, and you guys have probably heard this before, right? Like, what about robo-advising? What about Vanguard? What about this and this and this? Like, why do I need you as a financial advisor, right? If you don't know, that's going to rock your world, because you're going to really question, like, what am I doing with my life, with my career, especially until you have a death claim or a disability claim, or until you see this impact for 10, 20, 30 years. Like, it's hard, right? So you hear other advisor stories, and you're like, oh, this is awesome, but then when it comes to yourself, a lot of times it's like, what am I actually doing? What is my real value add? So first action item is I would encourage all of you to write a value statement. And I think that is so important. I'd say maybe one of the most important and significant things you can do early on is write a value statement. So what is a value statement? Well, it's basically answering that question. Why do you need me? What am I going to bring to the table? So my value statement basically says this is my purpose, this is my why. So it's a little different than like your mission statement and your vision statement and your values. Very similar. You take points from all those areas, but it's different. So again, you're answering the question if somebody comes to you and says, hey, why do I need you, as opposed to just doing my own thing through index funds and Vanguard or through a robo-advisor. The first thing in response to that is you always say, hey, those are great vehicles. Personally, Northwestern Mutual uses Vanguard all the time. Like, that's how a lot of our retirement accounts are funded. So I make sure you always have to empathize with people and understand where they're coming from, right? Because their perception is they're not trying to put you down and say, like, you're worthless. They're legitimately asking a question, right? And so what is it that your value, what is your real value as an advisor? Well, your real value is you can come in and have a relationship with somebody, right? You can make a huge impact because you can invite somebody to take action, right? You can educate people. You can simplify things. There's a reason why ultra high net worth individuals and pretty much any successful person in this world has a team of mentors, of coaches, because you need that, right? You need that collaboration. And that's where our value is, right? We're an advisor. We're not a broker or a salesman, we're a financial advisor. And this has to be, for somebody to be successful financially, no doubt in my mind, they have to have at least a couple people they can turn to and ask for advice. Like, how cool is that to have a clientele of 200, 300 awesome clients that you love, and you are one of the top 5 relationships to them. Like, that's such a powerful role to be in, and that's the opportunity we have, right? We've got the platform for it, we've got all the resources for it. You just have to have the conviction and the value of an advisor instilled in you, right? And Kevin's got different values that he can instill as for his clients than I have for mine, right? Like, that's another powerful thing about this career. You get to pick who your clients are, right? And you shouldn't have the mentality of, I want to have everybody as my client, because then you have nobody, and then your value is pretty much worthless, right? That's what robo-advisors are for. They're for everybody to a certain extent, but in that sense, they're also for nobody. So it's important to just understand, what is your value? What is your value proposition to clients? And share that with clients, right? So this ties very well into my personal mission. And I've got it written up on my office, and it's really to inspire clarity with my clients and to help them live their best purpose-filled life. So I share that with clients, and I explain that, I expound on that. I say, hey, the reason why I'm a financial advisor is because I come from a family of business owners. Our life was crazy, up and down all the time, as most business owners understand that. It's not a bad thing necessarily, but for me, growing up, that was so hard. And I promised myself that for my family, I was going to have security and predictability and peace of mind, because I wanted to be there for my kids, not just physically, but also emotionally. I didn't want to have to worry about finances per se. But I also promised myself that I was going to help as many people as I could, specifically business owners, accomplish the same things that I wanted. That peace of mind and understanding how do you leverage your own business and also manage your own finances and retirement and things of that nature. And so I share that. I'm very vulnerable with people, right, when I give them my value proposition or my mission statement or whatever you want to call it. But that immediately connects us. They see me as a person, and I'm trying to add value. That's your purpose as an advisor, right? It's to add value. And most of the time that means that you're going to help people take action, right? But your value proposition should be something you think about, you talk about, you share with every one of your clients consistently. Any questions on that? Have you guys made a value proposition before? Please.
But, so when do you bring that up? Is that like literally the first conversation you have with somebody? How do you go about that? Like
Yeah.
just in the intro or before your approach?
Exactly. It's the beginning of the approach for me. And it can be different for everybody. It's got to be a good setting, right? If somebody says, hey, I've got 2 minutes, I'm going into a meeting, like it's probably not the appropriate time, right? But usually if you're sitting down with them and you're starting the process, you're doing the approach, I just say, hey, let me take a step back and explain a little bit about myself and why I do what I do. You share that, and immediately there's power, right? If you guys haven't seen the Simon Sinek's video on Start With Why or read his book, like that's so powerful, right? You start every day with that. You start every meeting with that, every interaction, and there's power behind starting with why. And that's a lot of what I want to talk about today, is just start with a why. What's your why for each day, for each quarter, for each client meeting, and making sure you're on the same page. Right? That's why I love starting with questions. That's why you have to be intentional in this business, and especially with clients. Great question. Do you have a question? Yeah. So any questions on what your value proposition should look like, how you develop that? I think that's developed over years, but I think starting is key, and being able to communicate that to somebody else. Questions, comments?
Do you say anything in it as far as, like, getting people to take action? Like that
Great
brings
question.
and adds value? Like, do you say that at all when you're
Yeah.
going through your value statement?
Yeah, I often will. I'll share that, hey, my job is to add value because of this and this and this. And then I'll also say, often that value in your situation, it might be different from somebody else's situation. But always adding value means action, right? So you'll say that, and you'll explain that through your planning process, right? I think that's so key, and that's a belief that you have to. That's just truth, right? Like if you're the smartest finance person in the world, but you do nothing with it, like that's a waste, right? If you're the best financial advisor in the world, but you don't invite people to do something, you're wasting your talents, right? So yeah, great comment, Jen. I think we can all do better at explaining that and bringing clarity and the approach, and we can dive into that a little bit more, but thank you. So take that for what it's worth. If you haven't done your value proposition, do that along with your mission, vision, values, and your business planning side of things, and constantly review that. Review that at least once a week. Go over that. Communicate it with somebody else, with a mentor, with a peer, and share that with your clients. And you don't have to share like the formalized one, right? I never share my formal, like, hey, this is on my wall, let's read it together. Like no, I just say like, hey, this is why I do what I do, and it's powerful. And then I will turn it around and say, like, tell me more about, like, why do you do what you do? Why do you have a business? What's the purpose of that? Why are you investing? Why are you saving? Right? Just asking why is so powerful. Right? This is my why. Let me hear your why. And then with that, giving clarity of purpose and steps, and we'll dive into that. So, okay, we've hammered that. We had a question about speaking engagements. Great question. First thing to understand, I think, is that they're not the most effective way to find a client base initially. I had a perception that, hey, if I can come in and speak to large groups, I'm going to get a ton of clients. I think speaking engagements are awesome. I think you can do them really, really well. I think they have to be set up the right way. And I think you, especially the first few years, you can't have that be like your main way of prospecting, right? It's always got to be through relationships and things. So if we understand that, we understand the expectations, the reality, I think that's probably the most important thing to understand. Any questions on that? Great extra thing to do, but it can never replace calling specific individuals, networking with individuals, and inviting individuals to take action. Because there's no accountability when it comes to a big group. So I've done a handful of speaking engagements. I've done it with church groups. I've done it with real estate agents. I've done it with summer sales guys groups. It's really helpful to understand, what's the connection, what's drawing us all here. So for example, in a couple weeks I'm speaking at Keller Williams, biggest real estate brokerage in Utah, in Orem area, and so we have to set it up the right way. So the first thing is I make sure that I've talked to whoever's in charge of that meeting, right? So, and these are just principles that hopefully are going to be unilateral across all of the different speaking engagements. So, okay, what's the purpose of everybody being there? Who's the connection? How do I get buy-in from, who's going to introduce me? What's that relationship? Why am I here, right? Asking all those questions and answering all those questions. How do I set up the meeting the right way? How do I make sure that everybody knows who I am, what I do, why I'm talking to them? How do I know what's relevant to them, right? So for Keller Williams, I started with becoming a sponsor. I pay $500 a year, and I go there once in a while, and I just say, hey, I'm your preferred vendor, I guess is the title. And I know this manager, this person, I'm clients, I've got a handful of clients here and there. And so all of a sudden I'm on the in, right? So that's helpful if you can get on the in somehow, whatever group that is or whatever. And then you build credibility that way too, right? If I can say, hey, Johnny over there, we had lunch and we were talking about the brokerage, and these are the areas that, sounded like were relevant for you. So all of a sudden, if you have those connections and that instant value add, it's so much easier, especially in speaking engagements. So you have to set it up the right way, build a connection with whoever's in charge of it, prepare properly, obviously. You can get questions, engagement. While you're presenting, you can send around sign-up sheets, and it's usually not going to be sign-up sheets for, hey, if you want to do a meeting with me. A lot of times it's like, hey, if you want this particular paper on tax planning, or this particular resource, or things like that, a lot of times you don't want to be so just blunt and forward. Sometimes you do, if the environment's right. So for me, I'm going to sponsor a class at Keller Williams, and in that class, I'm going to totally have a sign-up sheet that says, hey, if you want me to contact you to go in this with to go more in depth with this on your personal situation, I'd love to do that. Sign up on this piece of paper. But if it's like a generic group, it's hard to do that. A lot of times you have to be pre-approved through compliance, so that's a whole other conversation we can talk about. That's a simple process that you just have to know how to do it. There's a lot we could talk about speaking engagements, and I'm happy to chat more one-on-one with any of you. They're awesome. You just have to have the expectation that that's usually a longer process and not as effective initially. Questions on that? Yeah, please.
So what are you mainly talking about in those situations? I know it's probably specific, but are you selling yourself, or are you kind of talking to them about how you specifically help their industry?
Good question. Yeah. Number one question for every day, every client meeting, everything you do is what's going to be valuable for them, right? If you're, honestly, the best way you can grow in life and in this business is by asking that question. What can I give as opposed to what can I get? Every client meeting, everything you do. So for Keller Williams, for example, that's my questions. What do they need? What can I give to them that's going to be valuable? If they're getting value, I guarantee you they're going to want to meet with me. They'll be clients, or at least I'll make an impact. And somehow they'll be value added to me. I'm not worried about that. That's just a universal law. If you give, you're going to receive. So depending on the group, yeah, you just ask that question. What do they need? What's the biggest value add? So my first quick presentation at Keller Williams, I just said, hey, these are the areas, these are the hot buttons for you guys. It's going to be taxes. It's going to be making sure you have cash on hand that's better than a savings account. It's going to be making sure you're set up as a proper business entity, LLC, S Corp. There's a lot of confusion about those type of things. So these are the areas I can help you with. And I had like 5 minutes. So I just said, hey, these are the areas. Happy to chat with you more individually. Let me know if you want to talk. So again, just ask that question. Start every meeting, everything with what's the best value I can add here. Is that helpful?
Yeah.
Good question. Any other questions on speaking engagements? We good there? Okay. So great question here on full Granum and focus there. Okay, so Granum is, the Bible of the industry, right? Especially Northwestern Mutual, where you got to do it. I think it's really important to understand what's the focus of, Granum, right? Well, the focus has to be on where the biggest impact is. Where's the biggest impact? It's going to be in meetings with clients individually, every single time. That has to be your number one focus. So Granum says to keep how many client meetings every day? Anybody know? Taylor, I know you know. 3. Yeah, I saw the fingers. Nate, right? So you need to have on your calendar roughly about 5, right? In order to keep 3 on average. At least that's what Granum says, right? Your ratios after a year or 2, you could argue that. My ratios are a little bit better than Granum now because I kind of started to build my client base, right? But as you start out, that's got to be the goal. So that's your number one Granum goal. Every single day is client meetings, right? And specifically, most of those are going to be fact finders, closes. If you have more than 20 or 30% being COI meetings consistently, obviously we're doing something wrong, because the purpose of COI meetings or centers of influence meetings are to get introduced to other quality candidates, or QSs, right, qualified suspects. So that's your number one focus, is keeping 15 appointments every week or 3 every single day. Everything else is secondary. So you just have to figure out, what does it take to keep that? So looking at your ratios, you have to figure out what are the other key leverage points, key factors or key indicators that are going to help me get to 3 appointments kept every single day. For me, it was roughly 25 to 30 dials every single day. That's just what I learned. The first year, it was 40 dials. 40 dials consistently. You got to do 40 dials. That's just what the ratios say, right? But over time, as I realized that, hey, my calendar's full, I'm keeping consistently 15 or more, instead of always having so many appointments on my calendar. I know a lot of them are not going to keep, or they're going to reschedule or have an excuse. Let me just keep the right amount, but continue to focus on prospecting up and getting better quality, right? So number one focus has to be the appointments. I'd say number 2 focus, that again feeds right into that, is how many dials you have to do every single day to keep that level, and then how many qualified suspects or referrals you get every single day. So if I were you guys, I would say, hey, this is my baseline. If no matter what happens today, I'm going to always dial 25 people, 30 people, whatever it is. I would say 40 people, unless you're already, for 3 or 4 months straight, you're keeping 15 every week. If you're at that point, then you have some ground to stand on. You can come to your mentor or me and say, like, hey, my ratios are a little bit better. But until you're doing that consistently, you have nothing to stand on. So you've got to do that. So figure out what's your baseline. You've got to do that for dials, and then also for prospects, for QSs. So being able to come in every single day to the office and say, okay, I'm going to keep 3 appointments this day, and I'm going to get 25 dials today, and I'm going to get 4 QSs today. Every single day, right? It's about the small and simple things, right? There's a couple books that I just love that just tie into this, right? The Compound Effect, The Power of Habits. There's a bunch that basically, just by mastering each day, that's how you build a business, right? And it's frustrating sometimes, because you think, man, there's so much, there has to be more to this, right? There's not. It's such a simple business. It's just a matter of doing those things every single day and knowing where to focus, right? So number one focus, always meetings. So, for example, if I have a client meeting that cancels, and now I only have 2 meetings that are going to keep for the day, like, I'm doing everything I can to get on the phones, to try to do an impromptu meeting, to do whatever I can to keep that be my focus, right? If it's the end of the day, I just say, hey, I have to make that up, so I'm going to set a couple extra appointments, or I'm going to get a couple more referrals. But you have to to have a baseline, especially with the things you can control, right? Dials and prospects. If you don't do that, I guarantee this is not going to work out. Even if you have a bunch of things go really, really well for months and months, if you're not consistently doing your dials, your minimum. Find out what's your minimum. What do you tolerate? In life, this is just a fact. You get what you tolerate. So if you are going to tolerate once in a while doing 10 dials a day or 5 dials or not even dialing because like, oh, I already feel good, I already closed a big case or whatever. Like, no, that's baloney. You have to figure out what is it that you're going to tolerate. And obviously, don't just tolerate things, right? Try to shoot for something else. But you have to have a commitment level, and that has to be the baseline. And if you don't do that consistently, this can't work out long term, I promise. So figure out what is that baseline. Taylor and I have talked about this quite a bit, and he's consistently done for the last few months 25 dials. And obviously the goal, the purpose of those dials is to set so many meetings. But that's the baseline. That's what he has complete control over. He is also getting, so many QSs a day, but if you have to have that baseline, otherwise, that's what you have control over, right? The results will follow. So that's the focus of Granum. Again, there's no magic to it. It's just, you just have to do it consistently. So Trevor and Taylor asked the question earlier, okay, we're consistently doing 70 to 80% of Granum, so how do we get that to 100%? And the answer is, I don't know. We have to ask some more questions. All right, so if we're in a one-on-one coaching session or a mentor meeting, I'm going to be asking Trevor, for example, okay, let's look at your numbers. Let's look at your ratios. How many QSs have you gotten for the last few months that this has been the pattern, right? How many dials have you gotten? Let's look at these ratios that are actually impacting your output, right? The actual appointments kept. Okay, let's talk about those qualified suspects. Where are you getting those referrals from? Can we increase the quality of those? And also increase the quantity and the quality, right? If you can do both those at the same time, you'll be wildly successful. A lot of times early in the business, it's hard to increase the quality super quickly because you're still learning, right? So you have total control over the quantity though. So for me, I didn't care if somebody was working or making any money. I just wanted QSs just because there's something to be said about mastering your art and just meeting with enough people, especially the first few years. If you can just meet with enough people, even if you're awkward and homeschooled and weird like I am, you're gonna figure it out. That's just the truth. If I can do this, anybody can do this. It has to be a quantity game first and then a quality game, and it just naturally comes. So, but there's more to that, right? It's, okay, what about the quality side of things? How do you do this the smart way? Because it's a constant battle of enough effort, enough quality, or quantity, but also enough quality, right? So we have to dive into that more. We have to figure out, okay, what's the best way to be prospecting for you and I? What's been the biggest success for you? And it might be different for Trevor than it is for Taylor or for me. We have to really dig in, but at the end of the day, it's all math, right? If you're getting enough QSs or qualified suspects and they're at least somewhat quality, like it's going to play out to being able to keep full Granum. But what happens is that we're busy, right? We're studying for tests and we've got paperwork and underwriting and applications, and we forget what's our toleration level, what's our commitment level every day. And as soon as we commit that, everything else goes down. So for somebody who's saying, hey, I'm keeping 70 or 80% of Granum, I say, hey, that's good, but that's kind of devastating because that means you're slowly dying. You're slowly getting yourself out of the business, most likely. Or at least you're not giving yourself that somewhat guarantee if you follow the system. So you've got to figure out, what are you going to tolerate? If you're going to tolerate being here and somewhat making a living for a couple years, you might make a living for a couple years, but you're leaving everything just up to chance. So you have to figure out, okay, how do I get that to full Granum? So for somebody like Trevor and Taylor, I would just say, hey, that's where you're at. You have to raise that toleration level, that commitment level, just a little bit. For these guys, it's probably just another 1 or 2 QSs a day. Probably just one. Probably another 5 dials a day. That gets them to full Granum. But it's hard because sometimes there's a 3-month time lag, and then you're distracted again, and life happens, and business happens, and so you just have to understand it's the small and simple things, right? The basic things. It's the power of compounding. Just every single day. Just detach yourself from the outcome. Figure out, how do I make this a business? It's the effort, it's the input, and then it's going to give you the output. No doubt. It's going to. It takes a lot of faith, though, right? So figure out what is that for you, right? What is the input that you have to get, and what's that toleration level? If you stick with that consistently, magic happens. It works out somehow. And sometimes it takes months, but it happens for sure. Helpful? Good? Any questions? So I'd say that's number two takeaway from this is figure out what's your commitment level. If I were you, I'd pick three different ones. On a daily basis, I do this. I get 4 QSs. I dial the phone, or at least outreach to a client, at least 25. For you guys, again, I'd say 40. Until you can prove to me otherwise, do 40. And then the third thing that I would put is whatever else is going to help you move the needle. If that's posting and planning, if that's studying for a test, if that's making sure you're ready for your meetings, whatever that is, you've got to have something else to help with that. So figure out those things, make it a habit, and detach yourself from the outcome. Just you have to do those things every single day. Okay, any other questions or comments with that? Good? Okay.
What about the controllables with Graham?
The controllables?
What if I do, 50 dials and I reach 10?
Yeah.
And I only set 3, should I be okay with that?
Great question.
Well, how do I do that? I go home and say, oh, I had
Right.
a great day, I did my 40 dials, but only set 2 meetings.
Right. I think that's such a good question, because I don't know about you guys, but I've had days that I did very little effort, but I got all of the results, right? This is just life. I did nothing, but man, I closed 3 huge cases, and I won the lottery, or whatever happened, right? And you're like, man, I'm a success. That's baloney. Your success is directly, it's measured by your commitment, right? So what's your commitment? What's your purpose? What's your mission statement, right? If you're not doing that, you have to tie all of this back to that, right? So for me, I can directly measure my success based off of my commitment. And a lot of this is actually tangible, you can measure it, and a lot of it's not, right? But at the end of the day, you guys know if you've actually fulfilled your commitments. And that's where you have to have clarity. Again, one of the most significant things for me is I'm a total nerd when it comes to like planning and goal setting, but it makes such a big difference. For me, I get up early in the morning, I spend at least a half an hour praying, reading scripture, writing things down, and bringing clarity to my mind. So super significant is, from the business side of things, is after I've taken care of myself, my own needs, I've worked out, I write down what are the things that I have to get done today. What do I have to get done today? What are the things that I'm going to tolerate? I will not tolerate not getting them done. Right? So if it's calling so many people, if it's getting so many referrals, if it's doing this specific case prep or whatever it is, like I have to have that list. Like that is your focus. Like if I don't have that, I go through the whole day and I do a lot of stuff, but I never get anything really done. Right? So you have to be intentional. So you have to ask the question, to bring clarity, what would make today successful? You ask that question to clients too, right? In order for this to be, valuable for you, what would that look like, right? Tell me about that. Give me clarity. Same with talking about retirement planning. Same with anything else. In order for you to be 100% confident at retirement, what would that look like? Let's talk about this. You have to keep digging, right? What is the income level? What does the lifestyle look like? How do you feel? Tell me about your family. Tell me, like, you're helping in every aspect of life, right? For other people, why don't you do the same thing for yourself, right? So wake up every single day and find out, what does it take to be successful today? You have to write the tangibles. A lot of times you can write intangibles too, right? Like, I'm going to take 10 extra minutes, say, to pray, to go on a walk, to call my wife, to tell somebody I'm grateful for them, right? I write that down, and I get it done. And a lot of times people make fun of me because my brother says, hey, you have to write down to have fun during the day? You're a nerd. But that's just how I am. And I feel like there's a lot of power to just clarity and purpose. And so if you can do that on the business side of things at least, like that's powerful, right? What does it take to be successful? And so Dusty's question is, a lot of times you won't have the results. I would argue that day that you made 50 dials, you're more successful. Like, that makes sense, right? It's not fair to base your success based off of results. it's only fair to base it off of your commitment and your effort, right? If you can have the right commitment, the right effort, but also be smart and actually add value, that's when power comes, right? We've had interns in the past that will do all the right effort and have the right commitment, but they're dumb. How do you say that? A nice way. Because they're just calling random people. They're not really leveraging relationships. They're not learning. They're not adding value. They're just like going through the motions, right? You can't do that, but you have to give the right effort, the right commitment, but also add value. Also do it in a smart way. Also leverage joint work. Also learn, get education. There's so many different ways to leverage all this, but what do you have control over? It's your effort. It's your commitment, right? So great question, Dusty. Thank you. Any other comments or questions with that? So hopefully this is powerful for you guys, because I guarantee you, if we fast forward 20 or 30 years, and we ask ourselves, like, was this impactful, or could this be impactful, this whole discussion? I promise if you apply it, it will be one of the most impactful things you ever learn. What do you tolerate? What's your commitment on a daily basis? And what does that have to look like? Whether that be in your spiritual life, your work life, your family life, you have to have clarity. You have to know what's the definition of success for you. I would argue the only true definition has to be something you can control. It can't be wealth. It can't be something that's external, that you don't have control over the results, which I would argue you have a lot of control. But it has to be based off your commitment. It has to be on your daily disciplines, your daily walk. Otherwise, it's just not fair. Any other questions or comments with Granum? The focus? Okay. So your approach and adding value, and this kind of goes along the whole conversation we've had so far. You have to start every conversation, every interaction with everybody as, I'm here to add value. And you have to understand that it has to be who you are. Right? So a big struggle for me coming into the career was I didn't really understand what my value was. I didn't really understand what I was trying to do. In my mind, I thought I was just an insurance salesman. That was really hard for me because I didn't want to be an insurance salesman. But I felt like I had to almost trick people to see that I was the best and that they had to buy from me. So a false belief system, very unhealthy. It's not true. Like, it's just not true. So I come in every meeting and you have to just question. You have to say, hey, I have no idea if this is going to be valuable for you or not, but I promise you I'm going to do my best to bring value to you. You have to believe that. You have to have true love, true charity. Like, as corny as that sounds, that has to be the core of who you are, and that's probably exactly who you are. Otherwise, you probably wouldn't be doing this. Being a financial advisor is extremely difficult, and only the strongest can do it. No question in my mind. So you have to have that at the core. As soon as you start thinking negatively about, hey, how do I sell this person or pitch this product or do this, everything goes out the window. It has to be, I'm here to help you, and let's explore this together, and I'm just trying to add value. Like, that has to be who you are, not just what you say, not just what you do, but that's who you are. So it's easy to meet with clients. It's easy to call people. It's easy to prospect when you lead with that, right? It's so much easier than thinking, man, I have to trick this person or I have to talk this way. Like, at the end of the day, it's who you are as a person that's going to actually be your real value add. So when you talk to a client with an approach, you have to lead with that. And it can be different based on your strengths or your vision or whatever, but those are the principles, right? So Braden, it's great to meet with you. I'm super excited. I heard great things from Nate. He said you're a stud. I'm not sure if our conversation today is going to be directly related to you or valuable for you, but I can promise you that I'm going to do my best to give you value, direction, and peace of mind, if anything. So help me understand, for today to be successful, what does that look like for you? And we talk, and we get clarity. But at the end of the day, it's all about, like, that approach. Right? It's about the relationship. It's about my sincere desire, and again, this has to be who you are. Your sincere desire has to be to help people as opposed to just build clients. Because you don't want to just build clients. You want to build a business. You want to build a clientele that has people that relate to you, that you can be passionate about, that you can genuinely make an impact, that not that they can just buy some insurance and then leave you forever. Like, yeah, if that can help somebody, Awesome. That's your whole approach. What value can I add? How can I help somebody, right? All the other words, I'd say, are not pointless, but as closer to pointless than who you are. How are you trying to actually give to somebody, as opposed to convince somebody or sell something? Like, who cares? People can sense you're genuine, you're sincere, you're trying to help. That's the heart of who we are and what we do. We could do some like specific examples and language, but I think that's the most important thing, is just to be sincere, to be yourself, to be clear, to start with why. Those are key principles in everything. Questions? Is that helpful? Not helpful? I think those principles are so powerful though. So I feel like the approach and this whole conversation you have with a client from the beginning is so crucial to setting the tone for the whole relationship. So the principles that I feel are crucial to communicate and to feel and to be felt are going to be, this is who I am, this is my why. Obviously help me understand your why. This is my goal. It's to add value. I don't know what that looks like, but these are the areas that I think might be relevant for you. It's to set clear expectations. That's when you go through the planning process, right? Today we're going to do a fact finder. Next time we'll do an analysis. We'll try to implement that analysis. Like that's great, but it's just like clearing, setting expectations, right? I always tell my clients, my number one expectation is that you're honest and genuine. If something doesn't make sense, I want you to let me know. If you're honest and I'm honest, whatever happens is going to be great. If you're going to go along with things and feel like it's not in your best interest, I don't want that. This is about you. That's my number one expectation. My number two expectation is that if I'm genuinely adding value to you, that you'll refer me to people that you also think could add value, I could add value to. So I give that to every client, and I just set the stage there. Is that fair? Tell me, Braden, what would be your expectations for me? How can I be the best financial advisor for you? And we have that conversation. Right? You lay that framework, and that's powerful. Like you can draw back on that. You say, hey, remember our first conversation? My expectation was that you're just honest. So tell me, was this good? Was this bad? Do you not understand something? And what I recommended, does that make sense to you or does it not? Because at the end of the day, this is you and your plan. It's not me and my plan. Like, this has to be for you. You have to always have that honest, just blunt conversation with people. If you do, everything just works out. Hopefully that's helpful. I don't feel like it's really relevant to share my whole approach because I think you need to make your own approach. But I think the principles are eternal. You have to just be honest and vulnerable, set clear expectations. Give people clarity and purpose of why you're meeting. And a lot of times you can approach that with just, hey, I'm not sure exactly why we're meeting, other than Nate said great things about you, so I'm just excited to explore. These are the reasons why clients love to meet with us, and I'd love to see if this can be valuable for you. But just out of curiosity, what would make it valuable for you? Right? How can I make sure that this is a good use of your time? Again, you start with expectations and clarity and purpose. Everything has to start with that. And a lot of times that's spurred through just questions. Questions are powerful. Just asking the right questions is really the preliminary step before knowledge or revelation or whatever you want to say, like just getting to that next step of higher level of living. Questions? You guys want to go in more depth into approach and adding value? No? Give me some feedback. I feel like I'm just like up here preaching and talking and yeah, please.
Something that Todd Anderson, the guy at annual meeting,
Oh yeah.
I really like the thing that he added there, and he's like, kind of going back to your comment of a homeschool, whatever.
Yeah.
I can do it, and that's, that was very impactful for me, saying, this is who I am, this is the type of planning and, personality that I have. If that meshes with you, and we kind of align that way, great. If we don't, let me pass it on to somebody else that
Absolutely.
matches your personality. So I've kind of tried to add that into my approach as well, and give just a brief summary of, this is how my brain works, this is how my
And there's so much power in just that vulnerability, right? That honesty. Hey, this is who I am. I love you, but at the end of the day, what that love means is I want you to be successful. So if I'm the right fit, awesome. If I can help direct you to a better resource or a better fit, awesome. Like that's, again, my number one purpose is to add value. So, great comment, thank you. Any other comments or thoughts on just your approach in adding value? So,
Sorry,
Go ahead,
I really like the part where you said, like, you almost get ahead of them on, because it's easy to ask somebody, like, what makes you successful for you, but
Mhm.
sometimes when you sit down with people that are like,
yeah,
I don't even know it.
Right, exactly.
So I think it was really great to hear you kind of how you get a step ahead of that and then ask the question.
Mhm. Great, thank you for that feedback. And a lot of times you can get some information from the nominator, right? Whoever referred you to that person, and you can understand a little bit about their situation. So now for me, when I'm working a ton with sales guys and business owners, and so I immediately, like, I'll ask the question, but a lot of times they're like, business owners are kind of crazy sometimes, right? So they're going in so many different directions. So I say, hey, working with business owners, these are the areas that are usually most important for business owners. Right? It's going to be making sure you can focus on your business. Like, you don't have time to focus on your other financial goals and personal finances. You probably want to retain employees. You probably want to make sure that, you know, the company next to you, your competitor, is not taking your employees. You probably want to, you know, prepare for tax season. Make sure that you're set up there. Right? And so you kind of touch on those high points that are so, you know, hot buttons for them. For sales guys, it's always going to be like taxes and making sure they have liquidity and making sure they're invested the right way. And a lot of clients have the same universal needs, right? Making sure they have peace of mind and security. A lot of times that's insurance planning, that's investment planning, that's a lot of different things. But yeah, great. You have to immediately add value. So how do you immediately add value, I guess, is kind of what we're talking about now. Is you have to approach everything as, typically, I don't know, but these are the areas that are important for me. Let me share with you. You know, and you can kind of go through the objective list. I mean, for you, Braden, I imagine that, you know, you've got something or somebody you care about, or you want to prepare for a family, or you want to retire one day, and there's obviously these like universal desires people have, right? Financial freedom, financial security, proper insurance planning, investment planning. You want to be a big business owner, and so you have to immediately talk to those needs. And again, if your question is what value can I add, it's easy to get to those objectives, right? And every conversation always has to be geared towards those objectives. The fact-finding process and a lot of our planning process is fluff, and it's good fluff, but it's not essential. You have to get right to the heart of it with every client. That doesn't mean you don't ask other questions. It doesn't mean you're not trying to be a comprehensive financial planner. It doesn't mean any of that. What it means is that at the end of the day, most people are not, you know, financial planners. They can't think of the whole picture, right? Most clients are going to take action on maybe 1, 2, maybe 3 goals this year. Like, it's very rare for a client to come in and say, hey, yeah, I'll do all that insurance, all that investment, all that tax planning. Let's do it all right now. It just typically doesn't happen. It's overwhelming. There's too much. There's so much going on in life. So you have to focus and help the client focus. So throughout the whole process, you have to say, okay, what's most important for you? What's your highest priority on this list? What do we need to do this year? Right? Simplifying the process. Because if you look at an analysis, you say, hey, you need to save $30,000 every single year in this account, and this account, and this account, and this is why, and blah, 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 blah. Like, that's awesome, that's valuable, but what's real value? It's helping people take action today. Right? It's not like, okay, this is good information, but that means nothing until you do something about it. So you have to figure out the way to add value, but again, how is value added? It's by helping people take action. It's applying things. So you always have to do that. With a business owner, it's got to be super quick. With almost anybody, it's got to be super quick, right to the heart of it. Every communication, everything has to be geared towards that objective, that goal. Again, we don't neglect everything else, but we focus on that. So as soon as I learned that, that was so awesome. I stopped wasting so much time. It's easy to go through a planning analysis with a client for an hour and then give them recommendations for half an hour, and then a lot of times they don't become a client because they're so overwhelmed and they just don't know what to do, and it's paralysis by analysis, right? So now, you start the meeting with, hey, this is what we've got prepared for you. It's this awesome analysis, happy to go through it. I'm planning on going through it with you for 10 or 15 minutes. These are my recommendations because you said your goals are this and this and this. Let's go through this and I'll explain why I'm recommending these things. And then let's pick the top, 2 or 3 that you're most relevant for you, and let's take action. I'll explain the next steps. So everything is geared towards action, right? Like, obviously we want to educate, but we want to educate people so we can enable them to take action. It's just so powerful, right? Life is meant to be actionable, right? We're meant to learn so that we can live a better life, and that's what we're supposed to help with our clients too, right? So,
Just a random question.
please,
So
Dustin.
in a PX or a PPA, this is just off the top of your head, I don't expect you to know which pages or whatever. How many pages do you think you show in a close
Good question.
of the PPA? Because there's like 69 in
Right,
the
there's a
PX,
ton.
and there's like
There's a ton.
120 or something in the PPA. So.
Right. Most of my clients are in their like 30s and 40s, so I usually do a PPA because it's more in depth with the retirement side of things. But the PX does the same thing. The first page I show is the recommendations page. I just jump right to that. Say, hey, well, these are your objectives first. These are your recommendations. So 2 pages, and then we'll go right to their objectives pages. So a lot of times it can be life insurance. We'll go there, okay, this is how much you said you wanted in life insurance to cover this goal. And then we'll a lot of times do the disability insurance plan and then a retirement plan. Once in a while we'll do like the buckets page or a couple other pages. But I'd say 7 or 8 tops of the pages. Unless somebody really wants to go through it, I'll scroll through most of them and say, hey, this is gonna explain this is gonna explain this. But I always preface it with like, hey, this is 69 pages. This is a lot of information. The purpose of us meeting today is so I can give you the high points and tell you what you need to do. Right? I'm the doctor here. I need to prescribe what you need to do today. So, great question. But yeah, you have to focus on the action, right? Everything in the business is helping people take action. And most of the time, going through more actually means less action because people get so paralyzed. So,
Thank you.
great question, Dusty.
Not to kind of cut it short because this is wonderful, but we have about 3 minutes left. So if any of you guys have any questions or anything specific that you would like to ask, we probably need to just open it up for questions
Right.
at this point, and then just kind of wrap up a little bit. So anything specific?
My question is kind of around, so you said summer salespeople and then realtors. Is there anything specific that you do? Because I've actually talked to a couple of those more recently.
Yeah.
And the one, kind of her main objection is, it's uncertain how much I'm gonna make next year.
Yep.
And,
Yep.
so I don't commit to this. And, my thought process is it's like, well, that's the whole, you do this planning to take away all the uncertainty that
Yep.
you have. You lay something out for you.
Yeah.
And I've got, some other summer salespeople that I'm gonna be meeting with next week. And so I'd like to know what kind of your best practices that you've done well.
Yeah, I think first of all, just empathizing with that person, right? Saying, hey, totally understand, I'm a business owner too, my income can be variable. Let's figure out the best system to get you to be, have peace or peace of mind or whatever that looks like. Maybe we set up another savings account, have that be your business account, and you give yourself a salary so it's never variable, but you give yourself a modest salary. Let's figure out the systems in place. And the strategy with the retirement stuff, well, there's a lot of options out there, and we can talk more in depth. But, obviously SEP IRAs, solo 401ks, those are awesome for real estate and for 1099 employees or individuals. You can put however much or little you want every given year. Universal life is another great option where there's very flexible premiums. That's usually the best thing for a lot of those people,
Okay.
assuming, lines up with their goals and everything. But we can definitely talk more in depth about that. Great question. Any questions?
Scott, you have a question?
What's your ideal income as far as like some sales and realtors if you want to do different?
I think that the question is really, what are their values and how much do they want to save? Because a lot of summer sales guys or gals most of them are very irresponsible and don't want to do anything responsible. They want to just spend everything. Same with realtors, right? Exactly. You have to understand, obviously, who you're working with, and at the heart of it, everybody wants to, but you just have to, align their behaviors with their goals, right? So, most of my average client right now, income is about 200, but if somebody's making 100 or even 75, I'd love to help.
Okay.
Yeah, good question. Any other questions? We didn't really get to permanent life insurance. Do you want me to just talk for 1 minute about that? Are we done, Dusty? Is that good?
It's up to the class.
1 minute, please.
Class, 1 minute? Okay.
Especially with the younger.
Okay, younger people, why do younger people need permanent life insurance? I think the first question is, does every young person need permanent life insurance? That's a very debatable, controversial question. I would say no, but I would say that most do. And let me preface that with a couple things. Not everybody is going to be a great client for Northwestern Mutual. Any client that's going to be a great client for Northwestern Mutual most likely needs permanent life insurance. And when I say a great client for Northwestern Mutual, I'm talking about they've got the same values, they've got the same long-term view, they understand the value of it, right? If all those things fit into their values and who they are, like yes, permanent life insurance is an incredible tool. Permanent life insurance is not an investment. It's not going to compete with a Roth IRA. So you have to explain, it's just all about education, right? So when I came into the career, I legitimately thought that permanent life insurance was the best investment in the entire world, and that it's a great vehicle, it's a great tool. It's not the greatest investment for retirement specifically. For example, Roth IRA, no question, is the best retirement vehicle if you want to retire at age 60 or beyond. No question, it's not even a debate. But if you need life insurance, yes, that's obviously a good option. If you need liquidity, if you need to have 10, 20, 30 grand at any point in your life, which everybody does almost, permanent life insurance is way better than a Roth IRA in that situation. And they're tools, right? Permanent life insurance, Roth IRAs, 401ks, they're all just tools. And Todd was saying this earlier, we're agnostic when it comes to these tools. Our job isn't to sell permanent life insurance. Our job is to help our clients. It's to focus on our clients. What do clients really need? They need insurance, no question. A lot of people need permanent death protection. Almost everybody needs a savings strategy or savings plan. Nobody has enough in savings typically. If you can do a forced savings plan, it's got insurance protection and a great cash value that doesn't go down with the stock market, that's an awesome tool. It's really just a matter of figuring out what's the right fit. How does this fit into your goals and your objectives? So you have to understand how that fits. What's the application with this? So almost everybody's number one goal and objective is going to be financially free one day, right? If that's their number one thing, permanent life insurance is one of the greatest tools for that. Protects against down markets, tax-free, liquid. It helps you diversify within your investment accounts. Like, there's so many cases for permanent life insurance. But as soon as you start to say, hey, this is better than your Roth IRA, or you should do this in place of your Roth IRA, your 401k, that's baloney. I'm sorry, but it's just baloney. You have to understand where it fits. So if you just explain these things, almost any young person that has a long-term view, that wants to retire one day, should do a good amount of permanent life insurance. So I wish we had more time to dive into that, because that's something I'm super passionate about. But it has to be a complement to their plan. It has to be in line with their objectives, and they have to understand that. You can't be over-promising. You can't be saying, hey, this is going to be better than your Roth IRA and this and this. It's not better. It's just a tool, right? As you just explain these things, like, well, it's a no-brainer then. I need it. It's just the best tool for those goals, for those objectives. Hopefully that's a little helpful. I wish we had more time, but any other questions?
I'll just make you come back next month. This is only my PLI, that's it.
There's a lot we could talk about. It's some good stuff. So
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah,
I'm sure
thanks,
everyone
guys.
found that